the advertising model is incredibly cyclical. So for all of us, unless we have a quality media, unless we have a subscription model, and of course arguably the BBC has the oldest subscription model in the world, we would not be able to function. We wouldn't have the funds to be able to produce objective journalism, because the more objective you are, the more expensive it is, because the more sources you need, the more exploration you must make. What about COVID and misinformation? I was looking at something which I scribbled down here. Facebook has removed more than 20 million pieces of content and over 3,000 accounts, pages and groups that violate their policies on COVID-19 misinformation since the 1st of July 2020. Does that surprise you, that big fat number, or do you think that it should be a lot more than 20 million pieces of content? I thought that it was probably, it didn't surprise me at all that it seemed that much, considering how much is uploaded every day. Jonathan, do you want to think about that?
I mean, it could be 20 million, it could have been 200 million. Yeah. It's almost infinite amounts. I mean, COVID was very, very polarizing, as we know. It was new. You know, a lot of the top experts were trying to figure it out. So it was very, very hard to build trust, because the theories about how you, I mean, remember at the beginning of it all, we were being told by the World Health Organization that you didn't need to wear a mask. Yeah. We've learned. And I think actually picking up on what Francesca was saying, it's an incredibly important point. Those of us in the information business at the top end, we've had it easy. We've been an elite. We've not been accountable. And social media has been very humbling. And what Francesca's doing, I think, is incredibly valuable by being transparent, showing how we do it, so that when we make mistakes, people can understand that in most cases they are honest mistakes. There's a lot of people out there with agendas who are deliberately distorting news. Those of us who can show the process will be able to build trust, and that is, we know in our business, it's the most important commodity that we have in the news business, trust. And we've got much less of it. It's much less automatically given than it used to be. And it's a real fight to get it back. So, I mean, actually with Facebook, I wonder whether, I don't think they're as transparent as they should be about how they do what they do. Explaining the methodology and being honest. Their model ultimately encourages polarization and disinformation, and they're making some efforts to police it, but we all know it's probably not really going to change the fact Facebook is going to continue to have a malignant effect on the information environment.
Which is depressing.
If I can...
Mimi.
Sorry. I just wanted to mention Nikkei's experience with the coronavirus coverage. The FT offered coronavirus stories free to read. And when, it became a pandemic, we started having a conversation in Nikkei Asia about offering our coronavirus blog without the paywall. And that was unheard of. It was a difficult conversation. But I think doing that, it really was the media serving a public good, which is really what we do. And it engendered a lot of goodwill. And, it's often our top read story consistently for the past 2 years. And it's gotten a lot of traffic to our other stories and gotten us a lot of subscribers. And so, when something like coronavirus is happening, that people really want to know what's going on and, the correct information. When media steps up, it really steps up.
Yeah, that's a great point to make. And of course, subscriptions went through the roof during COVID because everyone was stuck at home and as bewildered and mystified by this pandemic as, to your point, the medical bodies that we were looking up to as experts. And as Netflix and other media groups have experienced, that level of interest in subscription has started to ease. Now, we haven't seen it yet at the FT, although it's kind of flatlined a bit, but we haven't seen renewals fall off. So that's something that we're really looking at very closely. Mimi, you mentioned AI and machine learning. Well, we're going to get to a stage where machine learning will be able to scrape websites and pull together the facts for people to look at. Maybe not beautifully written, but be able to pull together the facts and produce a story that is objectively obtained. Of course, it depends what sites you scrape as to what becomes truth. But how close are we to AI, to machine learning, producing us stories that we can trust?
I think it's possible for the English language because, like, for example, like there are like top university in the state, for example, like MIT and the tech university. They're trying to develop the AI. You can see some of the news they're talking about the AI. Currently, they can create their own content, even not just only the article, but currently they can clone our face. We can call it like. It's like an avatar. Yeah, like an avatar instead of us, and can be like, we can see from like Chinese news as well that sometimes they can clone ourselves, and actually it's not us. And this is
so Jonathan, you could be all over
yeah, I can
different
be the
sites.
artist. I can be someone that yeah. And actually, like this is a technology that we can see right now. But for the this is from the U.S. But from the I have seen that Chinese companies they can do it as well. But in terms of like in Southeast Asia, some of the tech companies, I think that it's quite hard because, like, for example, like Southeast Asia market, we have a different language, we have the different culture. So to train the AI to understand the local language, which is very fragmented in Southeast Asia, it's quite hard to do that at this moment. But in terms of the English language, it can do.
Okay, that's
possible.
Possible. So, if we don't like the proliferation of fake news and sorry to use that word, Jonathan, of lying sources or whatever. Should we be thinking about legislation? Should we be thinking about a rules-based system for social media? I mean, on one hand, everyone wants social media to be free, not only just free for your pocketbook, but also free to experience and participate in. But on the other hand, when is enough enough? I mean, I know that, for example, Singapore has implemented a law called, what is it here? I've got it here. The Protection from Online Falsehoods and Manipulation Act. And they brought that in just before the pandemic, but they've used it quite a lot during the pandemic. And for example, they were able to bring down several Facebook pages over the last couple of years using that particular law. I mean, what do we feel? How do we feel about that? I mean, in my soul, I don't like regulation. I'm a free marketeer, I'm a globalizer. But maybe I'm just old-fashioned. Maybe my views are just passé. What do you think?
Looking at this region, there's two things that we need to bear in mind. First of all, the judiciaries in most of Southeast Asia have a very poor record in dealing with freedom of information issues, and siding with the state in repressing justified freedom of expression. So if you're passing laws, you're relying on a judiciary which already has a poor record. Secondly, what's the motive of these governments? I mean, really, which government, I know Singapore's got a super competent government and very smart people there, but really which of them is qualified to decide what is fake news and what isn't? I mean, every government in this region has a track record of suppressing news it doesn't like. It's really, I think it's entirely inappropriate for governments to be legislating on what is acceptable and what isn't. I do think there's a strong case for some form of media, I wouldn't call it regulation, but accountability and governance. And lots of countries have established bodies, and they've changed over time. There's a constant debate about it. Some self-regulation, there are independent bodies you can set up. In this region, it's very hard. You're already in quite a repressed media information environment anyway in Southeast Asia. Do we really want to give governments something else that can justify slapping it down? I don't think it's a healthy thing here. And then, we've got to get to countries like China or Vietnam. I mean, there's no freedom of information at all. So it's almost irrelevant. I mean, why even bother to police fake news when you can't get access to real news?
Yeah. You were going to say something.
Well, even without, an express laws regulating information, they already have tools, right? In the Philippines, they used a cyber libel law to charge Maria Ressa, the founder of Rappler and the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, several years after an article was published. And so they will have ways of skewing the laws and interpreting them in a way that goes after journalists. And so even if something's presented as, this is just for social media, it's to combat fake news, there will be a way to use that against journalists eventually.
Yeah, we've seen that in Hong Kong over the last couple of years with the national security law. Initially, it wasn't supposed to be retrospective, but now we're finding that the government is investigating people who have views that were expressed before that was introduced on the 1st of July 2020. So it is, even in a freewheeling place like Hong Kong, where I think had a wonderful reputation for the rule of law and freedom of expression, even that has started people are looking over their shoulders every day to check what they're saying and to make sure that it's absolutely justifiable. Opinion is not appreciated anymore. So what I'd like to do is come to our audience. We've got about 15 minutes. I could go on, and I'm pretty confident my people on stage could talk a lot, but I'd love to get some questions from you. And there she goes, our pocket rocket, Irene.
Well, I found this all very depressing, but it was depressing anyway. Hey folks, this is not networking time. Can you please pay attention to something so critical? To Jonathan and to you, Angela, because you're managing director of a newspaper. What do you see? I'm an old person who likes to hold a newspaper. I actually, when I was young, Francesca, I worked at the Columbia School of Journalism. What do you see as the future of the newspaper industry? I like tearing out articles. I like showing it to the staff. I like the thoroughness and the objectivity that I don't see on a little screen where you just do headlines. Where do you see newspaper journalism going?
I'll go first. That's an interesting question, and it's a topic that we on the board of the FT think about frequently. We've gone down from a maximum of about 28 print sites globally to 14 print sites now. 5 of them are in Asia Pacific. But our circulation has dropped by 80% over the last 10 years because more and more people want their news and analysis on the go, on the move, on their mobile phone. But there is still a place for the newspaper for the funniest reason. It's a beautifully, talking for the FT and I think New York Times and lots of, even The Sun, right? A very feisty tabloid